Well, hello, I'm David Freeman with Is That Really in the Bible? You know, I don't do any hunting. My father never really turned me on to that sport, but I do like guns, by the way, but I'm not a hunter. But I've heard of stories that there's nothing more frustrating for a hunter that if you've got, let's say, a bird dog and you're hunting quail, there's nothing more frustrating than for that dog to go chasing after a rabbit down a rabbit trail. Very frustrating. And I can imagine so. Now, Christians are notorious for chasing rabbits. Did you know that? Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Well, let's start with a statement here and see if you agree with this, if you're a Christian. God's people are ones who believe and obey God. Would you agree with that? That God's people are people who believe in God and obey Him. Now, for those Christians who don't want to obey God, and there are millions of them, the rabbit trail is this, that they will take you down. Well, we're not under the old covenant, we're under the new covenant. In fact, if I tell people that I keep the Sabbath day, or I keep the holy days, or I believe in obeying God, they will take off down this rabbit trail. And they will say things, well, that's the old covenant, and we're under the new covenant, and really nothing is required of us under the new covenant. So the rabbit trail is found in one word, covenant. And once you head off down that rabbit trail, you know, there's endless questions. Well, who's under what covenant, and who's under the covenant, and what's required, and that rabbit trail, believe me, never ends. And it's just a way that Christians use this diversion to get around the issue of obedience. It's really a deliberate smokescreen is what I'm talking about, that Christians use to get out from under the real issue. And the real issue is, do you believe that you ought to obey God and do what He says? So, again, God's people are ones who believe and obey God. There are millions of Christians who will not obey God. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Now, today we're going to train the wannabe Christians not to chase rabbits, okay? All those who are just playing church, the wannabes, the wannabe Christians, we're going to train you how not to chase that rabbit and go down that issue of, well, we're not under the covenant. Okay, we're going to talk about the covenant of God. Now, first of all, the covenant is not a law. Religious people use this in a synonymous fashion. They'll refer to the law of God and the covenant as if they're the same thing. No, it's not the same thing. The covenant is not a law. The covenant is an agreement about the law of God, okay? The word covenant means agreement. It's a contract. It's like a lease. If you're leasing, for example, if you're leasing an apartment, you sign a contract to rent this apartment for 1 year. And you sign on the dotted line that you will make your payments, and you agree, contract, covenant, agreement, that you will rent this building for another year. That's what a covenant is. It's an agreement. The covenant was an agreement between the people and God about the law of God. The people agreed to keep it, that is the law of God, and receive the blessings from doing so.